Evening to everyone. Well, I think as most of you know, the Embrace Fully program focuses pretty much all of its efforts on people who have spent many years and mostly decades in adult prisons and jails. And I think if someone or some organization had been able to intervene in their lives as young people when they were showing signs of being, at risk of breaking the law or hanging out with the wrong crowd, uh, maybe a good portion of those folks that we work with would have chosen a different and better path. And tonight we are going to have a conversation with Dr. Porshia Haymon, and she is the Chief Program Officer at Café Momentum in Dallas, Texas. She's also a clinical psychologist and has been with the organization there in Texas for 5 years. And Café Momentum, which serves incredible food, works with people who have crossed paths with the justice system. So Dr. Haymon knows something about the hard work involved in helping young offenders get on track. And incidentally, if you do visit the cafe, do the fried chicken. The question you might be interested in is how do you help steer a young person in a different path to develop life and work skills? That is away from the lures and the claws of street life and the easy money. Cafe Momentum is a model for other work skills programs across the nation. So Dr. P, as you are lovingly and affectionately called there, we are delighted to have you with us. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So let's just start off. Why don't you just tell us briefly about your background and what's behind your interest in working with at-risk youth?
Well, as David mentioned, I am a clinical psychologist. So I'm from a small town called Greenwood, Mississippi. I actually, funny enough, decided that I was going to be a psychologist in the 7th grade. And I know most people are like, you have no idea what you're doing in the 7th grade, which I really didn't. But I would have friends who would come talk to me, and I'm like, everybody wants to talk to me about their problems. My dad had decided that I was going to be a physician. I decided that I wasn't. I felt like we could compromise if I got a PhD and was still called doctor. He didn't get on board for this for a really long time. But I'd made this decision, I'm going to be a psychologist. And so I figured I'd better learn what they actually do because, you see it on TV and there's a person lying on the couch talking about their life. That's not actually what we do. So I started learning more about this whole field of psychology and was like, wait, this is actually interesting and something that I think I want to pursue. And so that's what I studied in undergrad. And at the time, I thought I would work with children who had terminal illnesses. That was a population of interest of mine. But then I realized that made me really sad. So I didn't want to do that. But I had done some volunteer work in a couple of schools while I was in New Orleans. And I did know that I liked still working with youth. So I knew that much. I went on to graduate school. And while in graduate school, I had a professor who left and was working for a school district and asked me if I wanted a part-time job while I was just kind of doing my externships. So I wasn't in so many classes. And so I was working for a school district. And I loved spending time at the alternative school. We rotated to different campuses, but I kept being drawn to the alternative school. So these were kids who had gotten kicked out of their traditional school for one of many different reasons. And I just loved getting to know them. I loved getting to understand the why behind what they had done. Because no young person just wakes up and says, you know what, today I'm going to go in and destroy my school. And the more that I learned that, the more that I wanted to learn that. So I decided, okay, I think this is a path I want to explore a little bit more. And so I ended up here in Texas, actually, for an internship in Louisville, Texas. And the internship was split. Part of the time I was working with the school, well, it was through the school, but they also had a clinic. And so I got to work with young people who were in a variety of different situations and different difficulties and their families. And so I did that. And after graduating from graduate school, I worked in Richardson, Texas at a school district, which was great, having the summers off. I have a daughter, and so we got to spend the summers together, but I did a lot of paperwork, and that wasn't fun. I wanted to have more time face to face with young people, and I was also finding that I was spending so much time again in the behavior unit. And so I was like, I am drawn to young people who most people don't want to spend time with, who have been labeled as bad or misfits for one reason or another. And so I decided to take it one step further, and I applied for a position with Dallas County Juvenile Justice Department. And I began working actually in one of our detention facilities. So the detention facility in which I worked was with young males who could be as young as 13 and as old as 17 years, 11 months, and 29 days. They had to be out on their birthday that they made 18. And I actually loved the work that I was doing there. And that's how I found out about Café Momentum. I actually was referring young people here. I came here and ate dinner and thought this is great work. I loved it so much that I reached out to them about volunteering. I said, hey, you guys are going to have this community services center, which is actually where I am now. It's our services center where our young people can come and spend time when they're not at work. We have a kitchen, we have a lounge area. It's a safe space for them when home's too much, but it's not time for work or they're not in school. And so I knew they were building this, and I said, hey, I want to come and volunteer. I heard you're going to give therapeutic services there. I never volunteered a single day. After we met a couple of times, they actually offered me a full-time job. Wow. And I was like, well, that wasn't what I was trying to do, but maybe we're onto something here. The position that I originally had didn't exist, so we didn't know what I was doing. We knew I was going to provide some therapy and we'd figure the rest out. And it has been the greatest, not just move as far as my career, but it has just been so meaningful. Like, I was supposed to end up here. This is where I'm supposed to be, and this is the work that I'm supposed to do. And so now I get to work with pretty much that same population when I was in the facility, but I get to walk with them out here, which is totally different than just providing them therapy for 6 months to 9 months while they're in the facility. The work that I do with them now is helping them with the real life current issues that they're struggling with while they're out and able to kind of make different decisions.
This sounds to me like you just have such a heart for the work. I mean, the idea that you're just going to volunteer, not even get paid to do something, that tells me a lot about you, and also says a lot about Café Momentum. But I think if you could just expand on Café Momentum, tell us a little bit about what it is and what, and what is it other than a place to eat? What's the vision? The food is terrific. But what's the vision, and what's the vision for the young people that are in your program?
Okay. The food is what gets people in. So that's how we convince people that they need to come check us out. But what we are is we are an internship program for young people who have been involved with the justice system, young people between the ages of 15 and 19. So this essentially means that every young person in our program has been placed on probation, has been arrested, has been in jail, has been in a detention facility, something along those lines. And the young people here are not forced to come to our program. They volunteered, they decide, hey, I want to do something different, and they come here. Ideally, the program lasts for each young person 12 months, but we don't force them to leave at 12 months if they're not ready. We don't make them stay 12 months. And when I say program, what we provide is an ecosystem of support. So if you take a young person who's been involved in the justice system and you start to peel back the layers, there's so much more that this young person needs than to just stay out of jail, right? This young person got into this, whatever they got into, due to a lack of something. Oftentimes it's education. We've got a young person who was struggling in school, and so they started skipping school. Well, when you skip school, you hang out with other people who aren't in school, who typically aren't making the best choices. And so here at Café Momentum, first of all, it's a requirement that you're in school if you have not already graduated or gotten your GED. Well, that was a struggle for some of our young people because they didn't want to go back to their traditional school because that was where they first started getting into trouble. And even if they were trying to do something different, the people at the school didn't necessarily believe that. And so that way down the hall, we started our own school. And so we have a homeschool here for young people. We also
Is
have,
it an accredited school? Can I
yes,
ask?
so they can, two tracks. They can get their high school diploma or they can get their GED. Some of our
Oh,
young people are 17 and 18 when they get to us, and they have maybe 3 credits. So the idea of them taking the time to get a high school diploma is very discouraging. And so we offer the GED track for them so that they know this is attainable. It doesn't have to take you 3.5 years. You don't have to be 21 when you graduate. There's an alternative.
mhm.
And then we also foster relationships with other schools. There are some schools who are willing to work with our young people to help them with credit recovery, and that sort of thing. And so back to the ecosystem of support, there's school. Each of our young people is also provided a case manager. And it's not a case manager in the sense that you might typically think about it, like when you're thinking about other services. What this person does for our young person is primarily 2 things. Helps them navigate resources, because these young people are at a lack of something. We figure out what that is during their intake, and we help them figure out a legal way to get those things.
Mhm.
They are perhaps trying to help mom pay rent, but they're 15, so they can't get a job. Their sibling may need uniforms. Well, there are actually places that provide school uniforms, but if you're 15, you don't know that. So their case managers help them navigate these resources. In addition to that, they are an advocate for them. They help them advocate for what they need, what they want, what they deserve. Like I mentioned, these young people may still be involved in the justice system, which means they have court appearances. Well, for some of them, they don't have a family member to show up in court and advocate and say, hey, actually, this young person is in school, holding down a job, trying to do something different. So can we maybe decrease the fines and fees that they owe, or whatever the case may be? And so our young people are provided a case manager. They are also provided with mental health services. And that's originally how I got into this. And so we provide them with individual, group therapy, family therapy, as much as we possibly can. And that's while they're here. And then also connect them with resources so that they can continue therapy when they leave. A lot of that is trauma work. So many of our young people have experienced significant traumas in their lives, which is greatly impacting how they operate today. And they don't realize that that's what it is. So we help them kind of unpack all of that. And then the 4th thing that we provide them is an income.
Mm.
They need money. They get a job. They get a livable wage that they probably wouldn't be able to get without being a part of this program. The hours that we provide them work around their school schedule, so they're not having to choose between work and school. And we teach them skills here. They don't just come to work and then just get paid to show up, but they're learning these skills in the restaurant that make them more likely to achieve a job when they leave. The way that it works in the restaurant is they rotate through all of the stations. So by the time a young person leaves in 12 months, they will have done everything front of house and back of house. So that means they will have worked in the dish pit washing dishes, but they also will have been a server. And so when they are looking for jobs, 2 things have now happened. They figure out what they like and what they're good at, and they are more likely to be what a new location is looking for. So when they go apply for a job, if that place is looking for a host and says, do you have host experience? They can say yes. Or if the job is saying, well, I'm looking for a line cook, do you have experience on the line? They can still say yes. And so ideally they work through the program and they are developing these skills. All the while, we're also teaching them life skills. They get financial education. What our goal is that when that young person leaves, they're on equal footing with a young person around their age who has not had the setbacks of the justice system, or the setbacks of all of the other experiences that our young people have gone to. We're just trying to kind of level that playing field.
Yeah. I got to ask, where are they living?
Well, that's a loaded question, David. Some of our young people are living at home with family members. Some of our young people are couch surfing. Some of our young people are trying to figure that out. And so that is actually one of our biggest things that we have to work through is housing for some of them. It's not so much an issue for our 18 and 19-year-olds because we have partners who can help them get into rapid rehousing type situations. The problem is when they are minors, because if a minor goes to a shelter, CPS is involved. And our young people are oftentimes very protective of the siblings who might be at home with mom or who might be at risk for being taken away from mom. And so they'd rather figure it out on their own, couch surf, sleep here, do whatever, so as to not involve CPS in their lives. Now, we have had some young people who we've been able to kind of convince that that route was probably not the best. But we don't force them to, if they can prove to us that they kind of have somewhere, even if it's not the best, right? Even if this is a friend and you're thinking, man, it has to be uncomfortable to sleep on a pallet on the floor every night.
Yeah.
But we don't force them to, go to a shelter or to do anything differently.
Do you ever go and see where they live or talk to the parent or talk to the guardian and
Yes.
how does that go?
Okay. When when a young person first enters our program, if they're under the age of 18, we do what's called a family visit. And we were very intentional about calling it a family visit because when I first got here, it was called a home visit. And a home visit for many people has a negative connotation. And so we changed it to a family visit. And essentially the way that we explain it is we're just trying to get to know the family. Find out if there are other things that are of need within the family because we recognize that that impacts the young person that we're working with. We have family members who are thrilled that there's something positive in their child's life that's keeping them busy and off the streets. We have some people who sign the papers and that's the last time we hear from them.
Hmm.
So it varies, like we reach out, we want them to be involved. We invite them to come have dinner. We love when families come in and can see that young person, doing something positive. I've had a mom say for so long, every call I got about my son was about something he was doing wrong. How
Mhm.
great it is to now have a call that's telling me he's doing something good.
Oh, that's terrific. I want to jump back here to just ask you, what are some of the typical jobs for the youth at the cafe? But really, the bigger question I think here is how are they taught the art or the craft of work,
Mhm.
service, excellence, patience, all that stuff?
All that stuff. So it happens in a series of things. So the first part is orientation. When a young person joins our program, they go through an orientation, which tells them about, it's what we serve is somewhat fine dining. And a lot of our young people have never gone to a sit-down restaurant. They have no idea about why we have multiple forks and spoons and knives on the table. And so they have this crash course in it. But then we hire actually a service training manager. And that person's sole job is to teach a young person about service. What does it look like? What should you hear? What should you say? What should you do? And that's a lot of the front of house things. And then in the back of house, our young people are side by side with chefs. So these are chefs who have made some of the most delicious meals ever. And now they're being tasked to take, this is less than a novice, a young person who's never really cut a potato and teach them how to make those dishes. And so a lot of time is spent on the training aspect. We are actually open for dinner only 3 nights a week, but our young people are at work 5 days a week. And so much of that time is just teaching them. But we teach them in what we like to call compassionate accountability. And so a part of that is how you're supposed to show up for work on time, right? Well, if a young person doesn't show up for work on time and they have not gone through the proper steps to get approval to be late, they miss their shift. Now, this can continue for some time. Like, we don't say you're fired, but you have missed out on your shift for the day. Sometimes it takes one missed shift. Sometimes it takes a few more missed shifts before a young person starts to realize that. And in each of those type situations, we're having conversation with them. It's not just, hey, you can't work today, go home. It is, let's talk about what this means. Let's talk about why this is important. And so they are constantly being taught all of these skills, so that when they leave in approximately 12 months, they're more prepared to be successful.
Yeah. So I'm assuming that not everybody there wants to end up or have their life be focused on culinary arts. It's just, so you're much more of a training program about the, maybe it's the art of service,
Yes.
the art of learning excellence, the art of learning patience. Those,
right. What we teach them, we consider transferable skills. So whenever we're teaching them a skill, we talk about how that is important if you want to be in the food and beverage industry, or if you want to be a mechanic, or if you want to be whatever you want to do, these things are important. And we have themes of the month. So this month's theme is communication. And every day, Tuesday through Saturday, we have what's called family meal, where we sit down and we eat. Staff and interns can share meal together. But then there's also a lesson. And so every lesson this month will be focused on communication. And the idea behind that is we're talking to you about communicating in your role here as a server or as a line cook or as a whatever, but we're also talking to you about the importance of communication when you're talking to your parents, when you are talking to your peers. And so we are using the restaurant as a vehicle to teach these skills that they need regardless of where life takes them.
yeah. Do you guys have group meetings where everybody gets a chance to go, this is what I think about what you're doing and how you're treating me? I mean, do you have a way of just sort of letting people air it out and also maybe just learn some things they didn't even know about themselves?
Yeah, well, a part of that does occur during family meal. It is the least formal part of their time here. You can kind of just engage in those open dialogues and conversations. But again, a big part of what staff does is to teach them how to figure these things out. And so you may have, let's say, 4 bussers, and one of them's really having a problem with the other 3 for whatever reason. Well, they are assigned a supervisor, and that supervisor isn't just teaching them how to be a busser. It's taking this opportunity to teach them about conflict resolution. It's taking this opportunity to teach them about teamwork. When we hire someone to work here in the restaurant, being able to cook or work in the front of house is secondary to what we're really looking for. Like, we're looking for people who are willing to commit to mentoring and training young people.
Yeah. Do people stay in the program throughout the length of the program?
No, some do. But what we do here is if a young person leaves the program because they say, this is hard work, I can make money easier, I don't want to do this, we have a policy where you can come back. You don't have to commit another offense. You don't have to get in trouble again. When you're ready and it's another orientation happening, come back. And so often it takes a young person a few cycles before they realize that they actually want to be here.
Yeah.
And so then they will stay longer in the program. And they can keep doing it. We've had young people who've been in the program 4 cycles before they realize, man, I should try to listen to you guys because you're actually trying to help me.
Yeah. That's interesting to me. Do you sort of let them know when they come back for the second and third cycle what it is that might be expected of you this third cycle around?
Yeah. So 2 things happen when a young person comes back. They meet with me before they can actually work. They have to, and the purpose of that is we want to have a conversation about, like, where did the adults fail? What should we have done differently to be there for you in the way that you needed us to show up? And then what are you committing to do differently? Like, how help me figure out, because if they're still in the same place where they're angry with everybody and it's everybody's fault except their own, then the conversation is it really a good time for you to come back, or do you need to wait again? Like, are you really ready for this? And then after they've had those sessions with me, we do a success plan. And so for their first tier, which is 3 months, they are committing to certain things that they're going to do and committing to certain things that they are not going to do. And so though we believe in compassionate accountability, this is a little bit more of that accountability, because you're not just learning this. You've done this, you know the expectations. And so we're going to hold you to a little bit of a higher standard because that's how you grow.
Yeah. Well, I'm just kind of so curious about all of this that how's your project promoted to you?
So, funny enough, the primary way that young people find out about our program is through other young people. Word of mouth is the number one way that we get young people in our program. Outside of that, we have a really good relationship with a lot of our probation officers here. And so we have our case managers, our education manager, also go out to like the alternative schools or the evening reporting centers, different places where youth who fit our criteria are going to be. And we also go to some of the more traditional schools and we essentially say, hey, look, if you've got a kid or a group of kids that you are pretty sure could benefit from this, then here's a flyer. We entice young people to come and at least give us a shot, because if you complete orientation, you get a $200 bonus. You just come try it. Just come see. And the worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to walk away with a food handler certification, which can get you a job somewhere else, and $200 in your pocket. And so that's our investment in them just from the beginning.
Like teaching financial literacy.
Yes.
I mean, you get $300 to a kid, and you know that could go in all kinds of different directions.
It could, and you know, our belief is that if this is it, and if we don't see them anymore after they've done this, we've lost out on that. But it's worth putting that little bug of hope in their ear, hoping that they're going to show up tomorrow for work.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, like what's the special ingredient or the method in your program that's probably most likely that's responsible for turning a young person's life around?
Honestly, I think the thing most responsible for this is actually believing in our young people, believing and helping them see themselves differently. So,
how does that look? What's that look like?
Yeah. When we get a young person first in our program, they are convinced that they are what everybody else has said they are, right? I'm a troublemaker. I'm a juvenile delinquent. I'm a high school dropout. I'm all of these things. And we challenge that. And we tell them that we believe that there's so much more than that. And we show them that, because you have zero skills and I just gave you a job. You haven't done any work and I just gave you a check. So I am going to invest in you, not because you have done something. There's this idea of it's not conditional. I am investing in you simply because you are here. You are here, and I believe that you can be more, you can be whatever it is. And it takes young people a really long time to actually buy into that, because they think there has to be a catch. And what we do, we just keep showing up. They storm out, they curse, they do all the things. And then they come back tomorrow and we say, hey, happy to see you today.
Mm-hmm.
And we just keep showing up. And I think the consistency of showing up and not wavering in how we believe in them and continuing to give them chances, but again, holding them accountable, but being consistent in that. I think that beyond anything else, beyond the skills that we provide, beyond the school that we provide, it's that. It's just the constant showing up and believing in them.
That puts to me, it puts a lot of weight, if you will, on the staff. I mean, you're talking about people that, you know, somebody's screwed up and keeps showing up and you have to respond in a certain way. Are you doing staff training or are you just hiring the right people, or both?
I would argue that it's both, right? Because even if you're hiring the right people, there's some training that has to take place in that, because we're all human, right? And if this young man that I'm teaching and nurturing and mentoring, you know, curses me out and throws the bread pudding on the floor and storms out, and then tomorrow he comes back and he doesn't apologize, but yet I'm supposed to continue, that takes a lot.
Yeah.
And so we work a lot with our staff from the very beginning about not taking it personally. Because 90% of the time, 99% of the time, that reaction that that young person has just demonstrated has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
You just happen to be the person that's standing in front of them at that moment. It's not about you. They're not angry at you. They don't hate you. And if you can learn to not take it personally, that's 70% of the battle. The
Yeah.
rest is being able to learn to communicate. We do have to work a lot with our staff on the second part of communication, not the talking part, but the listening part.
Yeah.
Because again, we're asking them to listen to a bunch of teenagers.
Yeah.
Teenagers, are teenagers, and we think we're adults. So what do teenagers know?
Yeah.
And
That
oftentimes,
sounds like you got two programs to me. It sounds like you got a staff program and you got a young people program.
yeah, we're all learning from each other. That's
Yeah.
that's a part of it. I learn so much from them. I tell the young people here that they make me a better parent. You
Wow.
know, my daughters should be coming up here to thank them.
Yeah. I love what you're saying. Can you tell us any success stories?
Yeah. Um, okay, I'll tell you about a young man. His name's Brian, who was one of those youth that I mentioned that didn't get it the first time through. So he came and he's a troublemaker in the sense if you think about like Dennis the Menace, right? Like he just does little stuff to get into mischief, but not anything major, not anything harmful. But he liked to toe the line. And he would toe the line a little bit too much sometimes. And he decided, I don't need this. I'm gonna go somewhere else and get a job. Okay, you have that choice. We'll miss you. We're here if you need us. He came back and he worked here a little bit longer. He worked the program a little bit. He actually, we learned a little bit about the struggles he was having in school. And so he started at our school and was doing a lot better. But he got dismissed from the program for a physical dispute with another youth. So he comes back a third time. And this time, you can really tell he's matured. He's figuring it out, right? He's working the program. He's going to school. He's on track to graduate, all the things. Well, it's funny that this is a success story, but tied in there is one of the most heartbreaking things I've dealt with. We had a young person who had been an intern with us and left and was coming back to join our program again. And during the week of orientation, he was shot and killed at a convenience store.
Mm.
Well, this young man was Brian's best friend. And so all of the good that Brian was doing suddenly didn't matter. He was on this self-destructive path. He was angry at everyone. He was taking it out. He wasn't going to school. He was doing none of the things he should have done. And it took a while. And Brian and I got engaged in some therapy, and he worked with some other people on some things. And he was grieving, but probably bigger than that is he didn't understand why he was still here. He had just seen his best friend. They were no different. He was no more worthy of being given this chance until he wanted to throw it all away. And so he kind of went down this spiral. And he technically left the program because he wasn't working any longer. But he continued coming for therapy. He continued going to school. He continued coming to sit on the couch and eat all the Cinnamon Toast Crunch because that's his favorite. And now Brian has graduated from high school. He has held down a job through one of our partners for now, has to be close to 9 months, maybe closer to a year. In the fall, he will enroll in college. And he's continued therapeutic services outside of here. When we think about success of a young person in our program, it's not always who goes through all 4 tiers and stays the 12 months and doesn't have a break. It's not just about not going back to jail. It's about forming these, improving their stability in life. It's about taking themselves to the next level. And it's about figuring out that they want something different from themselves and being willing to pursue it. And that's what Brian did. And now we see him and he comes back and it's like, can't believe this kid. Like, I remember you 2 years ago. And to see him now is, is amazing. So Brian is definitely one of my favorite success stories. Oh, there's a mosquito in here. I'll tell you a slightly, pretty different success story. We had a young lady.
Can I just ask you one more thing about that? Do you guys have mentors that after, let's say I leave your school or leave the program, do you have mentors that caseworkers, mentors, whatever you call them, continue to work with Brian and others?
So what we tell a young person when they're in our program, once you are a Café Momentum intern, you're always a part of this family. And so even after they leave, they can come back and get all the services. The case managers still help them navigate the different resources. Even in the case of Brian, he came back to get help updating his resume. So those services don't go away. We still, help them figure out whatever it is that they're doing. The primary difference is that he wasn't here working because that at the time was too much for him. So he wasn't a paid intern, but he was still around getting all of the other services. And we kept telling him again, no matter how many times you do something, we're still going to love you. We're still going to show up for you. You can't push us away. You can't scare us away. And to this day, Brian still calls and says, Doc, because that's what he calls me. And I say, yes, Brian. I'm at work today, and he wants to tell me about his day. And I love nothing more than hearing him tell me about what's happening at Chili's.
I like that a lot. How would you describe transformation? Trick question.
It is a trick question. I think the
what is it that occurs, do you think, that somebody just all of a sudden, not all of a sudden sometimes, but over a period of time, in some cases, somebody kind of comes to themselves and they just go, oh my God.
Well, I think honestly that's it, right? We have young people who continue to go on the same track for so long. They're making the same choices. They're hanging out with the same people. Yeah. The transformation happens when suddenly, or like you said, not suddenly, they're no longer hanging out with this friend. And then not that friend. And then they didn't go hang out last weekend. Or you see these small things. And then the other part that happens is the questions, the things that the young person talks about. They are now talking about their future. A lot of our young people can't think about a future because for them, there's no guarantee they're getting there. But when that becomes the question, when they are engaging in behaviors that demonstrate a desire for a future and a desire for something different, they're not doing these things because they're forced to, not because my PO told me to do it, but they're just doing the things because that's what they want or that's what they believe to be the right thing to do.
That's interesting. I like the way you just described that. So we just have a couple of minutes left here before we turn this over to other folks in the audience here to ask you questions. But is prayer or meditation or church attendance any part of the program? And if it isn't, how are moral values taught or emphasized?
Well, it's not a required part of our program, but we do, if a young person has questions or wants to know more, we connect them with or invite them. So our staff goes to a variety of different churches and practices. And so if a young person's asking questions, very often they say, hey, do you want to just come see? Like, do you just want to go? And then if not with me, hey, let me help you figure out, this is what it sounds like you're interested in. I know about this group that meets whatever day on whatever time. Maybe it's something for you to check out. We have engaged, again, like the meditation. We've had people come in to teach our young people about how they can do that for themselves, with themselves, away from everything else. Specifically the meditation aspect of it, because you don't need to be at a certain place. You don't need to have a special teaching to learn how to do this. And so we try to encourage that because we do think that there's significance in that. And to the second part of your question, I think it kind of ties to your previous question about what like the morals is. We look at behaviors, right? Like you can't really like quantify that what's happening inside has definitely changed. But what we do watch for is changes in behaviors. And we hope and pray that it lines up with their heart and what they are truly believing, and that it's not just I mean, they're teenagers, so they can't act very well. So if they are consistently behaving in a certain manner, we do have core values as an organization. And when we see that in our young people, we'd like to believe that this is also an illustration of a change within them.
Are you guys going to be spreading out across the country, or just going to hold it there to Dallas?
No, Dallas has been greedy for far too long. So we are spreading our wings. We have actually opened already a location in Pittsburgh that we opened last year. And next week, June 11th, we're having a pop-up dinner in Atlanta at the location that will open in the fall. And a pop-up dinner is essentially we borrow someone else's restaurant because ours isn't ready, but we are introducing Café Momentum to Atlanta.
Nice.
And then
How about San Diego?
Well, Denver is the first West Coast, and then we'll see what happens
That's
from there.
not the West Coast, incidentally.
Well, it's the furthest west that we're moving, but the idea is that we continue opening Café Momentums and changing the conversation around juvenile justice until I no longer have a job, because there's no longer a need for me.
Yeah. Well, I love Café Momentum. Got to tell you that. And so let's just open this up. Anybody got a question? You can raise your hand. Ask away.
Why don't we start with Ted there?
The question I wanted to ask follows up on what David was asking about in terms of other cities, but you've got a restaurant. Do you have a cookbook to make your restaurant? Do you have to do it yourself?
Yes, we have a cookbook. Interestingly enough, we call it a playbook. And so what we've created are a set of non-negotiables. So there are certain things that a restaurant has to do, but they do have some freedom to have their own regional flair. But there are requirements. So, and there are requirements not just for the restaurant part of it, but also for the services that they provide. So like every restaurant must also have a community services center. Every Café Momentum must guarantee that every young person will be offered at least 15 hours of work per week. The smoked fried chicken must be served at every restaurant. So there are things that are must. And we also have, so we have a national expansion team, and their job is to help those locations to actually follow the playbook and understand it, to ensure that it is in line. But it's not like a McDonald's where you have to do it exactly the same, but you do want to walk into a Café Momentum and know, I'm at a Café Momentum.
Thank you.
That's awesome. And it sounds like maybe Ted was also referring to maybe more of a consumer available, like cookbook for sale, something like that. Is that what you're thinking?
Like a literal cookbook. We do not have a literal cookbook, but we do sell certain things like the biscuit mix, which is a part of the smoked fried chicken. You can actually, guys, this is so awesome. I got a visual aid. We sell the biscuit mix. Almost as if I planned that. Um,
I want to get that. Those
Okay.
biscuits are pretty darn good.
and make sure I send that to you.
Okay.
Awesome. Judith, I see your hand is up. Or maybe not. I don't know if she. Judith, did you have a question or a comment?
I just realized I needed to unmute. um, and what I started to say was, I'm out here in California, which is the West Coast. And I'm glad that David spoke to that, so that you didn't think we were going to dump you in the ocean when you're invited to come out here. You'll have to excuse me for two things. The fact that I have my camera off and it is on purpose, whereas my audio was a mistake. I'm not very presentable at the moment, and so I would prefer to do this. The other thing is I have a couple of comments and questions that I'd like to ask both. Please forgive me if, in fact, this is something you've covered, and speak up immediately to me. I was a little late in joining because I kept getting dumped out of the Wi-Fi where I am staying currently. The Wi-Fi is a little problematical. First of all, I want you to know it was such a joy to hear your passion in your talk today. And I personally have felt for a long time that we're forgetting our young people in this whole incarcerated individual helping hand to make them returning and valuable citizens. As I listened to you, one of the things I thought I was hearing is this is very similar to what Mimi Silbert has done with the Delancey Street Foundation. And I see you shaking your head. That's a great pattern to use because they're 90% successful with the individuals they work with. The other question I have is based on that. Do you have any plan to have peer-to-peer mentorship?
Well, thank you for all of that. One of the things that we do is we have what's called ambassadors. So our ambassadors are young people who have been in our program, who have gone on and are willing to kind of give back to the organization in the sense of, one, talking to the young people who are in our program, encouraging them to stick it out and demonstrating the benefits of it. But these are also young people who are a little bit older, who also go out and talk to the community at large. And we do provide them with some training on like how to engage in public speaking. But these are the people who are driving this national conversation. Chad, our founder, we can go out and talk about it, but there's something different about a young person who's actually experienced it, talking to other young people. These are the young people who who actually went initially to Atlanta, and they went and talked to young people in a facility and said, hey, there's this thing, it's called Café Momentum. We're trying to get it to be here to give you a shot. And the young people are like, wait, there's going to be a school, there's going to be how can I get into it? And can you help my mom do all these things? And so, yes, they help on not just on a regional or where they are kind of basis, but these are the young people that we're traveling with to engage in this mentorship with other young people who may be in our program in different locations.
Thank you very much for that answer, and that's very helpful to know about you. One of the other things that this brought up to me as I listened to you, do you work with guardian ad litems?
Not that we don't, but we've just not been in a position where that's been something we've had to do.
Well, as I was hearing you answer my initial question, I was thinking of, and forgive me for being so exclusive in looking at California, but I was thinking about the fact that two ideal mentorships that I can think of would be with Stanford University, who has a wonderful program that starts while an individual is incarcerated and helps them get their GEDs and helps them graduate from college, and then has an acceptance rate into the university. And it would seem like though the individuals who've graduated, who've come through that program, would be ideal mentors for you. The other, and I know you've already thought of this, but the other ideal mentorship would be if you had a partnership with Delancey Street and their restaurants, so that they would, as young adults, they would have the option of going into another program similar to yours that would keep them in growing through the culinary or hospitality track.
I don't know to the degree at which our founder, Chad, he is actually who introduced me to Delancey Street, and he has worked with them in different capacities. I'm not sure the extent of it, but I do love the idea of our young people having the opportunity to have mentors who understand what they've experienced, but are also working through and trying to improve their situations.
Now I would like to get to the church component of this because it's very important to me. I serve as a volunteer Protestant chaplain at our local county jail. I was going in and out of San Quentin prison at one time, and then COVID changed so much of what was happening in that system as well as ours that now I'm just confined to working with the jail. And I have found my own personal experience has been once you can educate a young person that they are foundationally good, their self-esteem grows because it's not, in Christian Science, which all of us are, it's not a personal thing. It is the understanding that we are all God's children and that He loves us all equally. And that helps young people particularly understand that the person they consider to be their enemy is really their brother. And having a higher understanding of a higher power is very enabling to young people. And I will just quickly tell you, I speak from a lot of experience. I have 5 children of my own. I've had 18 foster children, all teenagers, and we adopted 2 of our foster children. One of the requirements for being in our home as a foster child, and you know this very well, if they're under the age of 18, the court is their guardian, not me. So we had a requirement, and that any young person that was put into our home for fostering had to go to Sunday school on Sundays, or the caseworker had to pick them up and sit with them for the 2 hours we were away. You can believe that the caseworker was always helping us get that child into Sunday school. But I can tell you from personal experience, every child we ever had placed in our home who went to Sunday school went on to finish college.
We're
And
gonna kind of move along here, because got a
I
number of people and we're-
understand. I'm sorry, David.
No, that's okay. Annalisa, I think your hand was up next. Unmute and go for it.
Yes, okay. So thank you so much for what you're doing and how you're doing it, and especially just the love that you have. I got to visit your cafe when we were in Dallas, and I enjoyed reading some of the things that were on the wall. And I'm wondering if you might share some of those things with folks here tonight, and if that will be one of the things that goes in your other Café Momentums across the globe.
So before I start answering that question, you are referring to the wall that had just the different, like the circles intertwined and all of that, and where it talks about what our youth get out of the program and all of those things. Is that the wall? I'm making sure. You're muted again.
There we go.
Better.
No. Okay, so I just remember not knowing that much about the cafe and just seeing stuff that was up there and thought, oh, that is really good.
Okay, yeah. Now I have to remember, you know, when you pass a wall every day and you don't really think about what's on the wall. But essentially it talks about just kind of the services that we're providing with the financial education that our young people get, with the mental health services, all of the things that our young people receive, and how they're intertwined. I never really thought I'd use Venn diagrams that much after I learned them in school. But it's kind of one of the ways that we illustrate what services our young people receive and what they need. And then we do talk about, you know, the success rate of some of those things, right? And success for our young people looks very different because their starting point is very different than the starting point of someone else their age. But it does talk about them completing high school. It does talk about their willingness to enroll in mental health services and all of those things. And it also talks about community partners, I think, on that same wall or a different wall, because we do think it's important for our young people to feel as if they are a part of a community. If you believe you're a part of a community, you're less willing to do damage to that community because now it's your community, right? If these are the people that you've helped provide groceries to, then you're not necessarily going to go and vandalize their grocery store or their home. And that's an important thing that we're trying to help our young people know, that you're not an outcast, right? You're a part of this. And it is an opportunity for us to give a quick snapshot when a person walks into the restaurant. And then it is also a talking point for the young people when they're a server, because sometimes they get nervous and it's like, just remember what's on the wall and say that stuff. And Annalisa, to your other question, yes, there will be an installation wall of some sort, very similar to that. It may not look the exact same, but at every Café Momentum.
Yeah, I found it was really a helpful communication point to me as just someone that came in saying, oh, okay, I see what this is about. This is not just about me coming in to get chicken.
Yeah.
This is about me coming in to really help this community with my business and with just my moral support. So it was good.
Yeah.
So thanks.
Thank you. And a part of what you just said about helping the business with your moral support, every time a diner comes into our restaurant, it sends a message to our young people that they matter, because you could go dine somewhere else, but you've chosen to come there. And so we appreciate you dining with them. And so when you visit all these other places, we want you to go dine there too and let them know they matter in all the other cities also.
Okay, thank you.
Kathy, you're up. Unmute. There you go.
Yeah. Hi. I was really fascinated tonight by your organization, and I'm wondering if you know if the Christian Science Monitor has ever done a story on you.
Not that I know of.
Okay.
But if I can find out. I do know the person who keeps track of all of that stuff. And so she would know. So I could look into it and let David know.
Well, I was going to suggest, I think you probably would know if they did,
Okay.
because you would be getting a lot of calls and a lot more attention once the article appeared. So I used to work for the Monitor for 16 years, and this is exactly the kind of story that they go for. And especially since you're branching out beyond Dallas to, I think you said Atlanta and Denver, and was there a Pittsburgh?
Pittsburgh, yes.
Pittsburgh. Okay. So that means that that this is really on its way. And so I would be happy to email the right person. We've got somebody who covers the South. We've got other people who do other things, and tell them about you. And would you be the person that I should, the contact information to give them?
That'd be great. Yeah.
Okay. Can you put it in the chat?
Sure.
Okay.
That's a great idea, Kathy.
I still think like a Monitor reporter, even though I haven't been there in a while, but it's a
No,
fabulous story.
You'd be surprised how many people we've met through the Monitor, has become partners actually with us. So pretty amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we're sort of hitting the limit here in terms of time. Is there anybody else that's got a quickie?
Yeah.
People. Okay.
Hi, Portia. Thank you so much. The whole talk, your whole talk, there was a frog in my throat and I was so touched. Thank you so much. And just now I wondered if you've ever heard of Nemo Patel or Nimesh Patel. He's from India. He would probably love to do a program with your kids. He's a rapper, singer that has enlightened lyrics and songs about being grateful and loving and kind, and just phenomenal singer. He does tours, and yeah, you can look him up on YouTube. But I loved your talk and your whole program, and I hope, like my mom said, I hope it goes global.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And I appreciate the note. Young people, I mean, all young people love music. And so if we can put something into them that's positive, we say here all the time that young people are being influenced 24 hours a day. If we can increase the hours that we or other positive things are influencing them, then how much change is, actually occurring.
Oh yeah. And Nimesh Patel, he does concerts in schools and community centers, and they're free concerts, and he gives free CDs. On his website, Empty Hands, you can download the whole album for free, and you'll love seeing his YouTube videos.
All right, thank you.
Yes, I really hope that you guys connect. And in fact, he's always doing tours every once in a while. David and Gabriel, thank you so much for a great program.
Well, thank you, Portia.
Thank you. Thank you, Portia.
Well, thank you guys for all being here tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say, I think that the work that you're involved with, it's very inspiring to hear that story, and it was a pleasure to also be able to visit the restaurant when we came to Dallas, just to see the front lines of what you were talking about. I mean, it just rang true, and it was like, yep, that was a space that was like, okay, this is people who are getting a chance to learn some skills that, I mean, they very well might not receive in any other way. So thank you so much for doing what you're doing and for coming tonight. It was really great. We will have the recording for this on our website in the next couple of days, and Dr. Haymon, you are welcome to certainly, if it's helpful and you would like to share it with your, your list and newsletter or whatever. If you'd like to, we'll try to shoot you an email once it's up.
Thank you.
And I just want to say, I love the idea of Café Momentum spreading. Like, it seems like an extremely worthwhile franchise to see in the world, and to see that work just continue to blossom and grow. So good job.
Thank you. And thanks for having me here tonight.
Absolutely. Well, you guys are a 4-star restaurant on top of being a really, really great program. So,
yeah. All right. Well, thanks everyone. Let's see, David, we've got our next Angel Team meeting is on
June 20.
Yep, it'll be June 20th at 6 p.m. Pacific. If you're on the mailing list, look for an invite to that. And we've got some really exciting developments that continue to come in the Angel Team space. And Dr. Porshia Haymon, thanks again for sharing your info, and to everybody for coming tonight. Good night.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.